So my topic is the archaeology of late Roman Greece's Imperial administration, and I'd just like to start by thanking my editors, Allison and Ellie. After Rome defeated the Greeks in the Third Macedonian War and destroyed Corinth in 146 BCE, the Achaeans became influential to Roman literature, art, religion, and many other aspects of life. While Greece played a great role in the development of Rome, Roman influence on Greece was slower. Foremost, archaeological evidence collected from surveys conducted across mainland Greece and the islands, particularly Antikythera, uncovered a ubiquitous trend of very low artifact counts in the Middle Roman period and a sharp increase in artifacts dated to the Late Roman period. Furthermore, the analysis of imperial policies revealed that this increase occurred after the reforms of Emperor Diocletian and Emperor Constantine, who both encouraged investment in the East after the constant threat of barbarian attacks in the West. Based on the archaeological data and the imperial policies implemented at the beginning of the Late Roman period, it is reasonable to conclude that the marked growth of finds from the time period was a response to public policy. It is evident that with the constant threat of barbarian attacks in the West, these attacks encouraged the reforms of Diocletian and the establishment of Constantinople as the new Rome. These reforms in late Roman Greece's imperial administration then directed trade and bureaucrats to the Eastern Roman Empire, increased settlement in Greece, and led to the marked growth in artifacts dated to the late Roman period. To start, intensive surveys across mainland Greece and the island of Antikythera revealed a pattern of periodic low and high settlement throughout Roman occupation, but that the shift from low to high settlement from Middle Roman to late Roman Greece was a particularly noticeable increase. Specifically, David Pettigrew's records from the Eastern Corinthia Archaeological Survey showed that 573 surveyed units contained late Roman pottery, while only 193 units contained Middle Roman pottery. Further, 1,707 late Roman pottery sherds were collected, while only 329 identifiable Middle Roman pottery sherds were recorded. Of the samples collected, the Middle Roman pottery was composed of mainly utilitarian vessels that lacked the distinctive designs of the predominantly Palestinian and Aegean trade amphorae found on the Eastern Corinthia survey. This comprised 63% of all late Roman assemblage. Aside from trade amphorae, the Eastern Corinthia survey recorded that Roman fineware imports increased exponentially from 3 Candarli vases and African red slipwares in the Middle Roman period to 71 Phocian red slipware and African red slip sherds in the Late Roman period. Nevertheless, comparable accounts of Middle Roman and Late Roman rims, bases, handles, kitchen, and finewares found that on the Eastern Corinthia survey indicated that there was always Roman occupation throughout Eastern Corinthia, but that the late Roman period ushered in a renewed age of above-average settlement. Overall, the archaeological record of the Eastern Corinthia Archaeological Survey exemplified a sharp rise in finds from the late Roman period. In addition to the Eastern Corinthia survey, intensive surveys conducted on southern Argolid, Methana, Nemea, and Pylos all had low levels of artifacts from 100 BCE to 300 CE, and then a marked increase in finds from 300 to 700 CE. These surveys also recorded a prevalence of large estates associated with late Roman occupation. In particular, the Nemea Valley Archaeological Project and the Pylos Regional Archaeological Project had high concentrations of sites in the range of 1.1 to 5 hectares, and no sites were smaller than 0.3 hectares, with 2 of the sites from the Nemea Valley Project and 1 site from the Pylos Regional Project definitively confirmed as late Roman villas. It is evident from the finds of red slipware, fine stones, coarse and plainwares, pottery, and tile from these large sites that these were agricultural villas. In fact, it was believed that the Pylos Regional Project villa had a quarry, salt pan, and a fish pond as part of its agricultural industries. Likewise, this predominance of Roman villas was also evident on the opposite coast of Greece. Specifically, a survey in Methana classified 2 villae rusticae, one of which was in a remote location and had remains of an olive press and costly farm tools, but lacked many finewares indicative of tenant-run farms under the control of an elite who owned the villa. Thus, The archaeological evidence from intensive surveys in Methana, Pylos, Nemea, and on the southern Argolid displayed noticeable growth in artifacts from 300 to 700 CE, compared to the earlier period of settlement, and that this settlement was concentrated in large estates in Pylos and Methana due to the Roman elite's investment in agricultural cultivation in the remote Greek countryside. A comparison of mainland to island surveys found that this pattern of low to high settlement indicates a shift across the entire province of Achaia and the Aegean. An intensive survey on Antikythera, similar to the Eastern Corinthia project, found that most of the Roman pottery assemblage dates to the late Roman period. Of the samples collected, there was a predominance of Phocian red slip sherds in the late Roman period, specifically 58.2%, while only 18.8% of the late Roman pottery was African red slip. In fact, the survey found that African red slip, which was produced in northern Tunisia and was very common in the Western Roman Empire, was gradually replaced with Phocian red slip, where, starting in the 4th century. In fact, except in Argos and Crete, Phocian red slip ware became the most common fine ware throughout late Roman Greece. As well, like in Eastern Corinthia, transport amphorae comprised the majority, 42 to 59% of all late Roman assemblage, but contrasting, Eastern Corinthia, Antikythera had far less late Roman amphorae 1 than late Roman amphorae 2. The African late Roman amphorae common to other parts of the Aegean were found in very low numbers, and Italian amphorae were not clearly identified at all. Finally, while courseware was an important part of mainland surveys, it comprised only 31 to 37% of all Antikytheran Roman assemblage, which was less than the mainland assemblages. Therefore, based on the material evidence from Eastern Corinthia, Nemea, Pylos, Methana, and Antikythera, it is evident that even though the mainland samples differ in type and quantity from the island assemblage, the increase in finds from Middle Roman to late Roman Greece was a province-wide phenomenon. Aside from the material evidence, it is evident after analyzing imperial administration and its policies that this influx of late Roman pottery was a result of new investment in the Eastern Roman Empire, particularly through the reforms of Diocletian and Constantine. Diocletian came to power in 284 CE after a period of political turmoil with over 50 emperors in almost 50 years. While Roman generals fought amongst themselves to rule Rome, barbarian tribes that were settled close to the northern borders crossed into poorly defended Roman territory and disrupted trade routes and rural communities. Consequently, cities from 200 to 500 CE built fortification walls around their borders using ancient spolia to quickly strengthen existing, less extensive city defenses. Diocletian realized that walls would not be sufficient to deal with growing barbarian threats, and with the rise of the Sasanians in the east, Diocletian instituted a tetrarchic system to address the Roman Empire's security issues. In the tetrarchy, Diocletian divided the Roman Empire formally into 4 areas, and chose to rule the Eastern Roman Empire, the quadrant closest to the Sasanians. Because he saw the challenges of the 3rd century crisis and the barbarian attacks in the Western Roman Empire as a precursor to its decline and recognized the potential in the East. Accordingly, Diocletian established administrative reforms that led to the flourishing of the Eastern Roman Empire. Diocletian established 101 new provinces, each divided into 12 to 15 dioceses, in which each province had a governor who would answer to the vicars of the diocese. Diocletian's bureaucratic reforms established an imperial court in each province. Consequently, territories in Greece that used to be primarily residential began to fill with Roman villas built by elites from the Western Empire to be closer to the newly established imperial courts. As Bintliff explains, the explosion of rural sites in Greece and other parts of the Eastern Empire from the 4th century on arose to a significant extent as commercial estates to service these needs of the elite. Constantine then continued this investment in the Eastern Roman Empire when he established Constantinople, or the New Rome, of the empire. Once Constantinople was established as the imperial capital in 330 CE, Constantine created a new axis of trade and interconnectedness within the Roman Empire in the East. As new senatorial and elite families moved to Constantinople because of Constantine's reforms on desired luxury goods, Constantinople became a new trade center. This directed trade to the east, which established new trade centers and routes along the coast, as well as expanded old trading hubs such as Athens and Corinth. As Binliff explains, the new focus of Constantinople at the head of the Aegean Sea converted Greece, hitherto a sleepy backwater with low external imports and exports, into the heart of the empire. Therefore, the reforms of Diocletian and Constantine, in response to the deteriorating Western Roman Empire, brought new investment to Achaia, as new imperial courts and the establishment of Constantinople as the new Rome and Greece as the new Italy made Greece the new center of political, economic, and societal activity in the Roman Empire. So based on the archaeological evidence and the imperial policies implemented at the start of the late Roman period, it is fair to make preliminary conclusions that the imperial administration led to increased settlement in Achaia and resulted in the noticeable growth of pottery from late Roman Greece. For instance, the findings from Eastern Carinthia, when analyzed in the context of the founding of Constantinople, demonstrate that East Carinthia experienced increased vitality and wealth and more regional connectedness to the broader Mediterranean society because of the new trade routes established across Greece to carry goods from the west, the former seat of power in the Roman Empire, to Constantinople, and the east, the new center of imperial power. In fact, the lack of imported fine wares and amphorae in the Middle Roman rural landscape exemplifies the previous isolation local Greek economies endured when the Roman Empire was centered in the west, while the perceptible increase in quantity of late Roman assemblage most likely represents the influx of trade sparked by the development of new trade markets after Constantinople became the new Rome. The difference in amphorae types recorded on Antikythera compared to mainland surveys also reflects the different economic functions the Greek mainland and island served in the late Roman period. After Diocletian reorganized the bureaucratic systems, elites moved to previously unutilized Greek lands, based on the very low counts of material evidence from the Middle Roman period in these areas, to be close to imperial courts. As a result, the mainland became the center for large commercial estates. These elites developed their own olive oil, cereal, and other agricultural industries, as shown through the villa estates in Methana, Nemea, and Pylos, each with remains of costly farm equipment and infrastructure to develop agricultural industries, because they wanted to capitalize on the growing local markets which emerged with the influx of settlers in the Greek countryside, as well as the new trade routes established after Diocletian and Constantine encouraged investment in the Eastern Roman Empire. In contrast, the material evidence found on Antikythera exemplifies the important role the Greek islands played in the shipping routes that emerged after Constantinople was founded. The lack of roof tiles and identifiable storage jars found on Antikythera, as well as its isolated position from the major centers of Achaia, confirms that the island relied on a trade economy, which led to different material evidence compared to mainland pottery assemblages. For instance, African red slip wares were prevalent in South Aegean surveys such as Argos, Athens, and Corinth, which suggests that these were major shipping centers for African red slip wares from the west towards Constantinople, while the lack of evidence of African red slip on Antikythera implied that Antikythera was a major center during the late Roman period for different trading routes compared to mainland Greece. To reinforce this argument, the prevalence of late Roman II amphorae as opposed to late Roman I amphorae, which was distributed predominantly through the Mediterranean, Black Sea, and the Aegean during late Rome, Phocian red slipware, Palestinian wares, and Egyptian wares further suggest that Antikythera was fitted into a wider system of trade routes established after Constantinople had been founded. So scholarship around late Roman Greece has widely accepted that imperial policies by Diocletian and Constantine led to this observable rise in finds from Middle Roman to late Roman Greece. Nevertheless, Pettigrew argues that there was a bias in this research towards highly identifiable body shirts when analyzing survey results, since in the Eastern Carinthia survey, they recorded 49 rims, 33 bases, and 111 handles from the Middle Roman period, compared to 322 rims, 37 bases, and 110 handles in the late Roman period. He suggests that there was not a large increase in artifacts dated to the late Roman period, but rather continuous Roman settlement throughout Greece's history. However, East Corinthia was always an important city center, regardless of the period of Roman occupation, which is the reason Eastern Corinthia found more comparable pottery assemblage and settlement patterns from the Middle Roman to Late Roman periods. Jones argues that late Roman imperial taxation policies led to the increased rural settlement in Greece and resulted in more archaeological finds dated to late Roman Greece. So Jones states that Diocletian changed taxation in cash, or nona, to taxation in kind and removed urban plebeians from important taxes because approximately 90% of the empire's revenue from Roman citizens came from agricultural populations. So Jones argues that Diocletian's tax reforms allowed rural communities to invest in new economic strategies because they no longer needed to produce more to meet the annona. Instead, these reforms increased rural settlement to cultivate formerly marginalized lands to make a profit from trading their surplus of agricultural goods. Jones's argument also relies on bureaucratic reforms by Diocletian and the establishment of Constantinople, which reinforces that ultimately the public policies presented by Diocletian and Constantine led to increased settlement in Greece and a predominant increase in late Roman finds compared to Middle Roman Greece. Moreover, Garnsey and Sauer argue that there was an appreciable rise in late Roman finds because in the late Roman period, Achaea's role was to provide cash for soldiers and officials, and this required direct imperial intervention to restructure Greece's rural organization to meet military and official needs by establishing a second army of producers. Garnsey and Sauer stated that this bureaucratic restructuring, due to this movement of local government officials to the countryside and the growing pressures of late Roman taxation, led to increased settlement in late Roman Greece. Similarly to Jones, Garnsey and Sauer's theory is based on bureaucratic reforms by Diocletian and the establishment of Constantinople, which emphasizes once again that the public policies presented by Diocletian and Constantine led to the increased settlement in Greece and a noticeable increase in finds from late Roman Greece compared to Middle Roman Greece. Therefore, it is evident from the agricultural evidence that the imperial policies of Diocletian and Constantine encouraged settlement and economic investment in late Roman Greece, which created a striking growth in archaeological finds for the late Roman period after very low counts for the Middle Roman period. This pattern of low to high settlement from Middle Roman to late Roman periods was documented across mainland Greece, in East Corinthia, Nemea, Pylos, and Methana, as well as on the Greek islands, represented in an Antikytherian survey. Imperial policies showed that after the barbarian attacks at the northern frontiers of the Western Roman Empire, Diocletian and Constantine encouraged settlement in the east, which created a commercial estate society and new trade routes in Achaia. Overall, it is fitting that the province that was a foundation of Roman culture and society later became the foundation of political and economic life in the Roman Empire when the West began to fall and the East began to rise.